Well, Happy New Year and welcome everybody. And today, um, let's face it, the two subjects that we have to address are not exactly the most scintillating of any that you will have within Rotary and the subjects that we do address, except that they are very fundamental to building a successful infrastructure in order for you to have a successful club and to have a successful administration. So Renee is our mistress of ceremonies who will be reminding people again to register your name, club affiliation, and position in chat. And if you have questions, please put those in chat in capitals. And Renee will be watching that, and both she and Rich and others will chime in and with some examples. So without further ado, okay, Rich, if we can have our slides up. And I've asked Rich to be the master of the slides because I didn't have time to practice today. So thank you. Okay, so running your meetings and running your club, and they are not the same thing, but they are absolutely intertwined. And Rich, if you would make sure that everybody is on mute, I'd appreciate it.
Got it.
And if we can, when you get a chance, go to the next slide. No, I don't
Hold
think
on
I
just a second.
am I? Thank you. That's go back one slide. Okay. Now in chapter 2, leading Rotarians, you had this particular little chart in your leadership manual for club presidents. And it talks about the kind of essential things that you've got to do. Motivate, listen, recognize accomplishments, and provide clear communications. And that really is what today's program is really connected to. If you go to next slide, please.
Hold on.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Next slide.
Chapter 3. That's
Okay,
it.
thank you. That's it. Okay, so chapter 3 in your manual, it's running your club meetings. And this was the chart that it provided you. Now, number one, on your right, I emphasize certain things by, providing some highlight to them. We will discuss number one, the first segment, run engaging in fun club meetings, etc. Oversee the club's reporting requirements. We will talk about that next in chapter 2, in chapter 4. And prepare for your district governor's visits and visits of your AG. We will discuss that in November. Okay, if you can go to the next, is it the next slide? No, okay. So what are some of the meetings that you run? What are some of the meetings that your clubs run? You can participate, I mean, but number one, board meetings, but also understand that there are 2 additional types of potential board meetings. One type, of course, is your monthly board meetings, but the 2 additional types can be where you have a special area project. For example, you need to update your bylaws or constitution. So you would appoint someone from the board to create a small working group, and that working group would be under the auspices of the board, and that would be an additional activity. Also, you could possibly have special board meetings. Why would you have special board meetings? What would be some reasons for that?
Something comes up that's unusual. Maybe you have the district governor wants to come and say hello to the board and couldn't do it at our regular board meeting.
Right, right. Something comes up at the club level that has to be discussed by the board. It also can be your elections that you do at a special board meeting. So there's a lot of reasons why you would have one. So you have those categories. You have obviously your standard club meeting, and I want to ask a question, and this is usually with speakers. Where do most of you get your topics? How do you know what type of speakers? Where do you get your speakers? Who's responsible for that?
We have this is Paul Sargent, by the way, from Woodbridge. We have one individual in the club who just takes that on and does a fantastic job, well connected, and of course he will also accept any recommendations from club members and so forth. But it's under the direction of one person primarily.
Okay, it's so my question is, so they execute, but people are encouraged to give him ideas and subjects.
Absolutely, and he solicits that as well.
Okay.
So it's not all just one person, but it's one person that coordinates it.
Right, and I think, how about other clubs? Do you do it any differently?
We have one person, this is Pat Lenahan from the Bull Run Rotary Club. We have one person, a past president, who coordinates among all the members, and every week a member is assigned the responsibility of arranging for a guest speaker.
Oh, that's very interesting. Okay.
In the chat.
Do you get to know what that subject matter is?
Yeah, I look for it to come to me the week before, so I'm able to include the person with the biography and the topic in the agenda that I put out before the meeting.
Okay.
This is Walisha Gill from Centerville Chantilly. We have done some of the things that have been mentioned already, but a new thing that we did this year was exchange our guest speakers list.
You might have another speaker on, Walisha.
No, I don't. No,
Okay.
I
Go
don't.
ahead.
Anyway, we exchanged our speaker list with another club in our area,
There
and
you
that seems to be working very, very nicely.
go. Right. So, go ahead.
Go ahead, which makes me think that we might want to consider establishing a speakers bureau, if you will, for our area, our district, and then we can all share the wealth.
Yes, absolutely. And
You're in charge.
we are very, yes, and Walisha, you're now in charge. But no, yes,
I'll second
we would
that.
love you to help us with that. This is something that we've wanted to do for a long time. Like, for instance, how many clubs know that George Mason University has a speakers bureau? And they will provide a speaker to your club at your request. You can only have 3 a year, but that's 3 already taken care of. So what Walisha is suggested, this is where we'd like to go. But my point for bringing this up is to make sure that you as an incoming officer, and certainly as the president, have some discussion with your administration people as to what types of speakers, if there are certain projects that you want to accomplish and there are connected speakers to that, you may want to go ahead and do that. If one person executing it is a good idea, but you want to be clear, if you are assigning this to one person, that they've got to get a sense from the group what are the kinds of things they'd like to hear. Sometimes also listening to your members about the topics that they discuss, things that you hear them say, I didn't know about that, can identify issues that need to be brought to the attention of the club. A good example, even though I know we're in COVID, and I'm so sorry for saying this, but a lot of people, and it doesn't matter what your age is on this, do not appreciate how often, for instance, wills and trusts and health advocates, etc., laws and regulations change, especially in the state of Virginia. State of Virginia is a bellwether state. They change often and they're highly specific. So that could be an area, whether you're doing wills yourself, you are dealing with an older parent, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, make sure that you spread that out. Club forums. Now, club forums are usually quarterly. You can have them as often as you wish. But you definitely, for every club forum, should be giving a financial update for the club. You can have special events that are club forums, as Curtis mentioned earlier, a DG visit, or you might have a mini service project. I always use the example of going ahead and doing coloring books and crayons and some little activity packages for children in the hospital. And you can put that together, and people in the club can actually color one of the pictures, pages in the coloring book, put your name down and put your age, and the kids get a real charge out of that, and everybody feels good. Elections or changes in actions that are recommended by the board that do require the affirmation of the members. And you should know what those types of things are, and be sure your people do. You may also have service project meetings and events. They're really in two groups, one in which you are the sponsor and control it, and the other is where you are participating in someone else's. So those are the kinds of club meetings, and there's probably several others. But the real issue for us is, what kind of meetings should you be having as a PE? And if, Rich, if you can go to the next, thank you. Now, the outline did have already on the right-hand side of the chart, run engaging and fun club meetings. I don't know how fun board meetings can be, but certainly they can, and club assemblies. One of the big things, and we mentioned it in the teaser to this program, in order to have that, you've got to have an organized meeting. And I don't care what kind of meeting it is, it's got to be organized. And what do we mean by that? Even as PEs, when you have meetings that are on the left-hand side of the chart, you have to know your objective, your action items. Okay, somebody just sent me an email, I'm sorry. That must be accomplished. Create an agenda. List the topic as the speakers in order, use a timeline, and Renee is also our timeline expert, so that we're supposed to do 20 minutes on this. I'm sure we're going to run over maybe 5, give me. But you need to have it in order, because wasting people's time is the worst thing that you can do, because time is so precious. And here are the other things. As a president-elect, you should be engaging in helping your current administration and president accomplish. Whoever is the person coming in as the president nominee behind you, form a team. Make sure that you include those that you are appointing to your administration, and if they are new, encourage them to come to board meetings, to come to project meetings. they should be shadowing the people whose positions they'll come in. Let them be that person's helper. And please create and use the committee structure. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. How do you deal with meetings in your preparations as PE? What are some of you started in addition to your just own personal planning? Have you started to have meetings with some of the people that you're going to have in your administration?
I'm going to have a meeting of all my board-elect a week from tomorrow.
Okay,
So,
great.
and I've invited them to attend the regular board meeting, which is tomorrow.
Right. Well, thank you, Curtis. That is exactly what we're talking about. And the big thing is for you to be able, okay, Rich, that's way too far ahead. We're at the end.
All right.
Although I'm sure many people wish we were, but
Tell me where we were, let's see.
keep on going. Come up. You're going backwards. Okay.
Got it, yep.
The only thing I was gonna say, Pat, was
Okay.
I only have like 20 people in my club, so I'm literally doing like 20 and 10. I've got one scheduled is to do like 20 WebEx calls and literally just talk to each person. I'm asking them the same like 5 or 6. I thought of a new question as we're talking about the speakers. Do we think we have good speakers? But
Thank you.
I have
That's
like
it.
5 questions that I'm going to ask each of them about like the direction of the club. And because I've watched this go from 20 people to 45 people like 3 different times over 14 years. So I'm trying to like shake off what we haven't done well and try to improve what we did well. But I'm doing that. I don't know, something about having a meeting and then maybe people can't speak up. So I'm trying to have 20 individual meetings in the next January and February so that I can then build the board of 6 or 8 people and then figure out the new year.
Andrew, would you mind sharing those kind of 5 whatever questions you're going to
I
be
will. I've got
asking
them at my
because-
office. I'll send those
Yeah,
out.
yeah, that's fine. Because I think everybody would find that to be helpful. And
And
you
I did
need-
have one funny one just to see if they were paying attention. The last one was if you could purge one Rotarian, who would it be? But anyway, it made people at least like be like, okay, this is good. So
well, but you do need to, first of all, kind of lay out what you are saying is at this point, kind of your draft vision of what you want to do, because people need to be bouncing off of something in order to give them a better base for their comments, as opposed to, oh, what do you think off the top of your head? And then, you know, let them comment to that. Let them be able to give their ideas. And again, you're beginning to build a program that is going to help the club become more vibrant, get more members. All of that isn't going to happen in 1 year. So this is why you're working with your current president, your administration, and really start working with that president-elect behind you so that your club can have a consistent continuity and you can show them, here's what we did this year, and then you told us this and we built on top of that. You know, members will feel much more positive. So running your club is really being organized. If we can go to the next slide. Okay. As a president, you are the project manager. And think about that. A lot of times in other organizations, the head of the organization isn't, they are a project manager, but not in the concept that we think of. Like for instance, in a professional trade association, members are the people who give the ideas, who identify either what they want accomplished or the result of what they'd like, whatever they're going to do to accomplish. And the project management aspects are assigned to the staff. Obviously, we don't have staff. But you've got to be able to work with the people in your administration to make them project managers as well. They've got to carry that discipline and practice through their operations. They should be patterning your meeting and your working styles in their areas. Critical ways, please use committee structures. I realize that there are a lot of people who are very talented and can do a lot of things, and it is in many ways easier to do it by yourself. But if you get people in your administration in critical areas doing things by themselves and will only call in certain people and will only tell people I only, here's the project, I only need 5 people. On the one hand, some members will say, oh, good, I don't have to get involved. You do that a second year, then their thought is, hey, wait a minute, I'm not being asked, I'm not being engaged. Using a committee structure is critical. Have them assign people as project captains. If I'm, for instance, community service, I'm going to have several projects. So I should be identifying captain. If I knew Jen, there should be someone on my committee that's going to be the speech contest captain and another one that's going to be the essay captain, et cetera, et cetera. Think about and ask them new ways that you can accomplish these projects. And make clear that you have to make sure that for every activity, they're taking photos, they're taking essential information, and that information is getting back to PI so they can be put in your newsletters or alerts or whatever you use to communicate on your website, please, on your Facebook page. This is the fodder that allows you to keep websites and Facebook pages current. And then, of course, don't forget about submitting one of your good projects for the district newsletter. Talk about what you do. And if you do have local press, and I put parentheses around that, in my area, the local press is the Washington Post. So we have to look for other things like blogs and community newsletters and things of that nature. What are some of the things that some of your clubs do? Do you use a committee structure? Have you been successful with that? What are some clues and keys that you could share?
Press your
Well, I
space,
know.
press your
Who?
space bar. If you want to talk, just press your space bar and hold it down. And then when you let it up, it will put you back on mute.
I'm sorry.
I was just announcing that some people don't realize that if you want to talk and answer Pat's question, what you need to do is press your space bar down and that will unmute you. And then when you let it back up again, that will mute you back to where you were. Go ahead, Pat.
Okay. All right.
Pat, this is Curtis
Sure.
at Bailey's. Yes, we have a committee structure. There's actually, we had the directors and officers, each one has a committee. How each one uses the committee is up to them at this point. But that's one of the things we will discuss at our board elect meeting is, should each person, and some people may not have a committee and some may have a committee in the past. And, we can ask them to have at least 2 people on their committee. So it'd be a total of 3 and more if they want.
Okay. And Curtis, could you talk a little bit about the Mustang planning program that you have for the fundraiser? And this is an example of, again, when you're in those project committees, the kind of project detail that you hope people will get to, especially with very large and complex projects.
Yes, we're in the 30 plus year of our Mustang raffle. We have a committee. We keep on adding people, but there's some people who stay involved in the committee year after year after year. We've developed a checklist on that committee of all the things that need to be done. and we assign duties to certain people. One to keep track of the incoming money, one to who's in charge of getting the mail out to the snail mail out, one in charge of website, one in charge of email mailings, someone who's in charge of helping find locations for us to take the Mustang in a year when we can do that. And then we meet frequently right after our regular meeting, our Friday morning meetings, and we meet after that and have a discussion about where we are in each step of the project. We've had some meetings. The committee meets year round because it's really a 2-year project for each Mustang. We have someone who looks at purchasing a Mustang and getting it fixed up, things like that. So it's a very active committee and it keeps people involved. And then of course, when we do the car side sales, we don't require, but we expect every member to at least go out once or twice and do car side sales, which is actually a club motivating experience. I think it gets people together, plus it helps us sell Rotary to the public.
But I think, and the key thing to this is, number one, you've got a lot of people involved, but in an organized fashion where they understand what their assignment is and the time to accomplish that assignment is not overwhelming to any given individual. The second thing is it's highly organized even when you're asked to come out to sell tickets, time slots, etc. So members totally appreciate and are attracted to that kind of organization. I see we have a couple of questions. Yes, the club administration committee, it is sort of the same as your board. It depends upon how your club organizes it. For example, some clubs only have the officers as their board. And for instance, the person that heads up your community service, etc., those people may be sort of consultants to the board. Other clubs have all those people as part of their boards. But that's kind of why we're using that administration committee, so that you know it's all the people that you're appointing or were elected in different positions that are necessary in order to have the club operate. Jay, I see absolutely, you may be 3 hours from George Mason, but you're lucky because you got local press, and that is such a valuable asset. And you really need to, all of you that do have local press of any kind, radio, publications, etc., man, leverage that. And they're always looking for stuff. And even though you send in an inquiry and it may not happen that time, it certainly can happen a second or third time. If we can go to the next one. And this should, yes, I want to say a word about minutes and club records. This is really a very important thing that too many clubs do not take as seriously or as importantly as they need to do. I know we think of ourselves as, oh, we're just a little service club or whatever. Under the law for Virginia and the federal government, we are corporations. And unless you haven't incorporated, and oh God, then all your personal assets are on the line. So I'm sure no club in our district is in that position. But anybody who's on the call that is an attorney, you will agree with this. Being a corporation, you are expected, both under law and under your insurance provisions, to operate like a corporation. And one of the key elements to testing whether you meet corporation, not just in name, but understand the law and insurance looks at two things: in name and in practice, okay? And the key thing for practice is that you can evidence you are having regular board meetings in which you are carrying on the business of the corporation, you are making decisions, and that you are memorializing them in appropriate minutes, which you are storing and are able to present those upon need. Having things written on a piece of paper, having 1 year with minutes, having another year maybe with some minutes, having grossly different styles of minutes does not help your case. So this is why I really encourage you, even though somebody may run for secretary or agree to be secretary, make sure that they actually know how to take notes at minutes and actually how to produce minutes. And what will be helpful to you as leaders, to certainly the secretary and constantly to your club, is to make sure that quorums, okay, to make sure that you have a pro forma outline. Have a already set outline that you use for meeting agendas. Sometimes it'll be board, sometimes it'll be club, sometimes it'll be a project meeting. That then fits in with the pro forma outline you have for your minutes. And here are some of the
Do you have a sample of that that you could send out next day or two? At our club, I'm pretty sure has not
Yeah.
done that in years.
Yeah, sure. In fact, I think I may have sent you one of the attachments in the, we're going to post all this stuff, and I apologize, we're a little bit behind. The people who post were on vacation, so we'll be posting, and we'll be sending that out to you.
We have another question from someone asking your thoughts on meeting minutes for club assemblies.
Yes. Yes. Anytime that you have, because in a club assembly, you are demonstrating that the board is reporting to the people to whom it is responsible, and that is to the club members. So you should be keeping minutes, and those minutes should be stored. Many times at club assemblies, again, going back to that earlier slide, we identified several different uses for club assemblies. And one of them is the affirmation or ratification of your club officers. You've got to be able to memorialize that. If you are adopting a club bylaws, an updated club bylaws or a section of the bylaws, that needs to be recorded and it needs to be memorialized and retained. Do we have any other questions on that? I think somebody asked a question about quorum. Was that what I saw? Did I see that?
Yes, I did. I asked, is it necessary to have a quorum to conduct business?
Okay, there's two answers to that. First of all, in a board, if you are conducting and need to be voting specifically on actions at that board meeting, you do need to have a quorum to conduct that business. If, on the other hand, the board meeting is kind of an update, and I would really encourage you to avoid board meetings that are nothing but updates, because you'll notice in my notes, I want you to differentiate update information from action-oriented things. Action-oriented things should be on your board, should be a board meeting. But if it is not, if there are no actions and you're discussing things, you are leaving actions to the next board meeting, there doesn't necessarily need to be a quorum, but you're not really acting officially in that capacity. If you are dealing with at the committee level or at the project level, a quorum, I mean, it depends upon how many people are there. You should always try to move actions that are of the whole, where you're not necessarily, people are not arguing and fighting and there's divided votes. That may be something that happens regularly on Capitol Hill. It is very injurious for that kind of behavior to happen at service organizations. So did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions before we get off of this? But, okay. Are we on time there? Okay, all right. So anybody else have any questions before we get to how to run your club? All right. I'll take that as a no. All right. So now we're going to run your club. All right. And remember your outline that this is really about the kinds of things that you need to know. Obviously, as a president-elect, they gave you some pointers. Learn about your club. I have to read this because when I read it, I thought it was like bizarre. Learn about your club policies and procedures by reviewing the standard Rotary Club Constitution and recommended Rotary Club bylaws. That's going to tell you what Rotary wants you to do and needs you to do, and is a good suggestion, but it's certainly not going to necessarily teach you about your club itself. So you need to look at those things as well. That's being on the board, the kinds of things that we've talked about. You do need to look at whether or not your club needs to update their constitution and bylaws. And I say this because, and this is why we sent you the September 2020 Rotary Codified Club Procedures and Practices, because a lot has changed in Rotary. And a lot of clubs have been operating for a very long time, and you were established under the old constitution, the old bylaws, and you still have them in place. Those, if that's the case, you really need to look at that, and you really need to update these things. Now, that may be a year-long project. It may go into an 18-month project. But let me give you an example. In the state of Virginia, you as a club can conduct business of the board, but particularly the board, via email or now, of course, Zoom. But technically, your bylaws have to recognize and allow you to do that. So if your bylaws don't allow you to do that, are silent on that, then there can be issues. So that would be like, if, for example, one area you should look at to say, you'll be able to conduct across multiple mediums. So, and the last thing I have on the left is setting up with a club manual of policies, practices, and procedures. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. I want you to know, and as soon as I finish this first thing, Jake, if you could then follow my intro here to talk a little bit about billings, district dues, RI dues, and that process. I realize that you're finance people, and let me step back and say, I hear a lot of club officers and club presidents say, oh, I don't handle that, the treasurer handles that. Foundation, oh, I don't handle that, I don't know, the foundation chair handles that. As president of the club, who do you think is going to get called if something happens? It's not going to be your treasurer and it's not going to be your foundation chair. It's going to be you as the president. And if your answer is, well, I don't know about that, they take care of that. That's a problem. Now, that doesn't mean you are the person that's supposed to be doing it. But it does mean that you're the person that needs to understand what it is, who does it, and make sure that you are kept up to date. Yes, this was done. We sent it at this time. Yes, we have the evidence and where that evidence is. I will get, oh no, we paid that bill. Well, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Can you just send us the information of, you know, how you paid it and what? Oh, we don't seem to have that. So with that, Jake, do you want to kind of outline real quickly for everybody about dues issues?
Okay, what I want to say first of all is that you got to understand that you're going to get billed twice a year, one by Rotary International. Your Rotary dues will come from Chicago. They will be sent to your treasurer by email and also your president. The president and the treasurer that's listed in DACDB and is on file at Rotary will be sending you a semi-annual invoice on your Rotary dues. The district will also be doing that same thing. We will be synchronized with Rotary starting this January. Your clubs will be getting semi-annual district dues, and those invoices are sent to the treasurer on record and the president. And so we're replicating the same procedure at district level that you have at RI. And it's a little confusing sometimes to new treasurers or new presidents. They get confused between their RI dues and their district dues. But the whole point of my point is that expect two invoices, one from Rotary International that you'll get in July, and the other invoice will come in January. Those are the two billing months for your Rotary and your district dues. And it's very critical that you understand that your membership numbers get frozen on the last day of the fiscal year, which ends on 30 June. So RI bills you the appropriate amount per member as reflected on your membership rolls on the 1st of July, the beginning of the Rotary year, and they do it again reflecting your membership on 31 December, so that the invoice that you get in January, you have to pay for the members that are on your rolls as of 31 December. And those membership numbers are not negotiable. If your club secretary has not dropped members that you've lost, in that intervening 6 months, you're going to get charged for whatever membership numbers are on your books as of 1 July and 1 January.
Thank you, Jake. Does anybody have any questions on what Jake just reported?
What if you have a member who will drop after July 1st, but they're still a member as of June 25th?
You're going to get charged for him unless you take him off the rolls before the end of June.
And we're allowed to take them off the rolls knowing they're not going to re-up.
That's correct.
Yeah, if you know that.
I would highly encourage you to kind of be honest with yourself at the end of June and say, we know that this person is not attending, and we need to take them off the board, off the rolls, so that we don't get charged by RI and district.
Now, one question I have of the clubs: when do you bill your members?
In the case of my Rotary Club, we billed our dues on a quarterly basis. We have a set amount per member, and we have different categories of membership, and we do it on a quarterly basis so that there's a steady income stream. And it's also beneficial to members because you don't get a big chunk of money, once a year or twice a year.
Right.
We
Okay,
bill quarterly also because it allows us, because we have the meals rolled into that too. So that allows us to keep current with our the restaurant that we pay to.
right. Okay. And I think the point I'm getting here, and the two examples are good, and if there are others, what you want to be able to do is structure a dues billing practice that does not leave, like, there are some clubs who do not bill the members until July 1. Now, how are you going to know who's going to pay or who's not going to pay if you're billing in the new year? So, and then the problem is 10 people don't re-up. Well, you're not going to know that by July 1, and you are not going to get to renegotiate your membership number.
Several of the participants are commenting about what their clubs do. Let me know if you're ready for that.
Yes, go right ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Well, there was also a question about the length of the bylaws, and I think we can answer that quickly by saying it depends on the club. You know, there are template bylaws available online that you could start with and work towards incorporating everything that you and your club want to do. Taylor Lewis can attest to the fact that their 125 member club spent 3 years updating their bylaws. So it's not an easy task, and it needs to be a group of people that are work well together. But some of the comments are they're billed quarterly, but this person is pushing to make it semi-annual. Another one said their members can pay monthly, quarterly, and annually a lot. It seems like annual or semi-annual is pretty regular, and quarterly. I know our club, you're given the choice of doing it annually, quarterly, or monthly.
Okay. And do clubs, the other question I have, and we're going to probably do a survey on this because I know other clubs always want to know what other clubs are doing. And we can only know that if we share that information with each other and we collect it. But do all clubs take credit cards? Do all clubs have like Apple Pay or the Square to be able to run credit cards for
We do
costs?
not do that at the Bull Run Rotary Club. We tried that last year, and the fees that we incurred were too great, and we didn't want to absorb that, so we stopped our credit card process.
Okay, you did not include the cost, you didn't pass that on to the member?
What we did is we were going to include the cost in there, but what that is add on the 3% or whatever it was. So most members, in fact, all members then said, well, I'm not going to use the credit card. I'm going to give you the check. And so everybody paid by check. And thus we were paying for a capability to use credit cards that nobody wanted to use because they all preferred to pay by check.
And what system were you using, Pat?
I'm not sure which system we had. It was through our bank. They set that up.
Through the bank. Yeah.
There may be other ways, and we're willing to explore them, but for right now, it did not work for our club.
Right. Jay Black, you have the Square. How's that working?
Yeah, it works really great for us. I mean, it's just a point of sale thing. And
Right.
when you have people at your farmer's market or whatever, where you're selling tickets and they can just swipe their card, the fee's never really been an issue for us.
Right. Now, remember, if an important thing, when you're using, let's just use the example of Square, but this is illustrative of anything. If you are doing fundraising, you have to have a separate account from your Square that you're using for your operating, club operating. So make sure you have to, it's not really that expensive. We find it, we used it at our club. We had the two different and it worked great because people said, you know what, I'd rather put let me just charge it. And they get the points and everything else. So anyway, start thinking about these more convenient ways. But I wanted to underscore the issue of the dues, primarily because we're all in some difficult financial situations. We want to know right away if your club is having an issue. Don't try to pretend it isn't happening. Don't try to hide it. We're going to hear about it. And if you are overdue by 90 days for Rotary, they can pull your charter. And we don't want to see that happen to anybody. So we want to work with you and, you know, and have this be a successful circumstance for everybody.
Well, we can pay monthly, quarterly, or annually, and we do waive the fee if someone will pay annually up front, just get it all done. Otherwise, we add the fee on, they know, or they can pay by check. I mean, we give them all kinds of options.
Right.
This thing about having a separate account for fundraising is new to me, though. We have one bank account. Do we have to open another bank account to link it for fundraising?
You don't, well, first of all, if you have a foundation.
Okay, we do take a lot through the foundation. So if we take fundraising through the foundation, we're good?
That's
You
where it
can-
should be taken.
Yeah, you can be, and you know, work with your accountants on that. But in order to keep, and our club maybe is a little bit different in that Curtis was talking about the Mustang, which is our big fundraiser. We are, because of the amount of money that we raise, and I know Vienna Club is in this category and all, we are all overseen by the state. And we have to treat all of those monies in the same exact way we would treat monies in a C3 organization. So we do have to segregate our accounts, we have to segregate our transactions, etc. So there can be reasons why you should have two separate operations.
We do have two separate accounts. So all the fundraising should go through the foundation account.
Right.
Everything else can go through the club account, because I'm just learning this, that our club is actually not a C3 organization, but the foundation is?
Yes, right,
Okay.
right.
Okay.
As a service club, service clubs are generally C4s. And what that means is you are nonprofit, you are seen as doing charitable works, but there's also things that you do for the benefit of your members. And a genuine C3 organization, a foundation, only is doing things for others. You do not do things, you don't have members and you're not doing things for members. So there's a slight difference in that.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, there is a question. It says we allow people to choose to go through the foundation, but I thought they go through the regular account, and oh, sorry, that was to me. When we do our fundraiser, if people want a tax deductible certificate, then they have to ask for that, and it goes through our foundation account, and they get that tax deductible receipt for that. So that was I didn't realize it was private. And then someone else did say 2 tax IDs, you need 2 separate books and bank accounts. And then Mr. Black is going to get back to us about what his club does for Square, so we can square that away.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it.
Hey,
Okay.
Pat, can I add one
Yes,
recommendation for the club presidents to consider? A couple of years ago, we started a budgetary process that I would recommend people at least investigate. And that is, we make assumptions of, we have a certain membership, and our club side, we figure out a budget for what we're going to do, our meals and whatever. We come up with a balanced budget on our operating side or our club side. We do the same thing with the foundation. We have our community service or youth services, and we look at our legacy projects, how much we spend on them. And then, we get the inputs of what changes do we want to make this year to improve our program. And we basically, in the month of May, come up with balanced budgets for both operating and foundation in terms of the upcoming year. And then we basically, in June, have the club in a club assembly approve the budgets, both the operating and the foundation. And we do that before the 1st of July so that everybody's bought in, if you will, on what the plan is for the next year. Just the recommendation in terms of a budgetary process for PEs to work up to the 1st of July.
That's right. And if I can add to that, one of the other things we do is we do have to present a budget at CPETS for it to be approved. And we'll go through what that is later, not today, but at another program. But we also then keep tracking where is our membership, the number of clubs, etc. Projects. Sometimes, for instance, a good example was we were going to have a visiting team from Australia this year. So we provided the $10,000 for that, but they didn't show up. So we're always making adjustments. And sometimes, for instance, with membership in the past years, that has had to say, well, look, we started with this many and now we're down to here. We've got to recalculate the whole budget. So we do that as well.
If I could say, Pat, we did the same thing that Jake mentioned there. We have a budget for both the club and for the foundation.
Right.
And what that does, and we've did the same process he did there. We go and we present the budget, and that both gives me as the president. I'm the president and the president-elect this year. I don't know how they're going into that, but what we do is that gives me both the authority to spend without having to go to the club every time we want to spend something and say, do I have the authority to do that? They know what we're going to do, but it also puts a constraint on me that I can't go above that without going back to the club and saying, okay, we're over in this. And I planned on a mid-year adjustment, but it looks like we don't have to do that right now because we're staying, and a lot of this may be COVID related, that we're staying within the constraints that we had, and therefore there's no reason for me to go in and have to make adjustments and say, okay, we spent more, we're spending more on here and we're spending less over here. I want to move it around. It looks, again, possibly I'm benefiting from the COVID lockdown on everything that we're doing, but that's the way we did it. And I plan for an update once every 6 months. Just for any tweaks for when things aren't operating exactly as you anticipated in July.
And I would like to take Patrick's point one step further. Back in 2015, when I was president, I gave the chairs the authority to spend within their limit. We had the club approved the community service budget, and I expected if any variations that came up in the year, that was the chair of community service, he could move the money around within that community service element of the budget. And that builds trust in your leaders when you do things like that.
I agree completely with that. That's great. We're not there yet, but it's aspirational for me to get to that.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I looked at a question I shouldn't have done. I threw myself. Anyway, but being able to have those practices while, again, making sure you have that club forum that is reporting back to the members, here we are, here's the status of the budget, this is how much, et cetera, so that everybody in the club knows what's going on. Do we have any, I see Jay has a question. Do you want to share that with the group, Jay?
No, just making a point, going back to somebody had mentioned 501c3 status. We set up a scholarship fund with our local community foundation here in Matthews, whereby members or anybody else for that matter, if they wish to bypass the club, may make contributions directly to the scholarship fund at the community foundation, which are 501c3 tax deductible.
Okay, right. Well, we are getting at that wishing hour, and I apologize because I'm going to have to just take 5 more minutes of your time. We will go over and we will do the project, the manual of procedures, policies, etc., at another time. But I really want you to review those slides. We'll send them out. My reason for all of the detail in slides 9 and 10, yes, was to overwhelm you, because that is only some of the requirements Rotary makes of clubs. So having a manual of procedures is a critical document, and it will keep your club organized. It will make projects easier. People will feel more comfortable. And you will find it is very popular with the new members you're going to bring in. I appreciate it might not necessarily be so with current members, but it is the thing to do. Rich, if you can just go to the last slide and we'll just kind of summarize this. And this has been a great conversation, and I am happy to have an additional session on this if we have additional questions. If people need help in discussing bylaws, constitution, please advise. We'll get some working groups together to do that. As always, I thank you for your time, your attention, and your appreciation, and most of all, your contributions that we learn together. We will begin tomorrow. You'll start getting your information on strengthening your membership. The Zoom for that session will be January 19th. It will be at our normal time, and it will be our usual ID access. Immediate past District Governor Jonathan Lucas will be our guest speaker. He is chairman of our district committee, membership committee, and he also happens to be our representative of innovative clubs for the zone as well. Last thing I want to do is we want to start getting to know you and your clubs. The only way that I can be the most effective leader for you and for our district is to get to know you, to understand what your needs are, your ideas, and everything else. So please, if you would, I would love to participate in talking to each of you one-on-one. I'd love to participate and get to understand your club through your Zoom meetings or however you are meeting. And with that, if anybody has an absolute question they have to ask, I'll give you one more. If not, that'll be it for this evening. I'm sorry I talked at you more than I ever have so far. But you'll be relieved to know I won't be talking at you. I hope I was talking with you, but we'll have other guest speakers. Everybody have a great evening. Again, Happy New Year. We are here. We are gonna be Team Galaxy, and we are gonna take Rotary by storm. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.